everyone's attention to the Hopkinton Town Council meeting of February 3rd, 2020, to bring the meeting to order with a moment of silent meditation and salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's just a terrible.
Sorry we're a little late tonight starting. We had some important interviews for the vacant school committee position, so apologize for the lateness. Those went over. First up, consent agenda, approved town council meeting minutes of January 21st, 2020, executive session minutes of January 21st, 2020, set March 2nd, 2020 as a hearing date for a special event permit filed by the Ashaway Sportsman's Club, the annual Hopkinton Day. Approved tangible tax abatement resulted from duplicate billing submitted by the tax assessor.
I'd like to call January 21st, 2020.
Town council meeting?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the waiver of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Page 8, Scott?
Yes.
Okay.
Down here, well, number one, I think it's daily.
Where are you? Page 8.
Okay, page 8, okay. Yeah, page 8, where it says the forensic audit, I think we deliberately tried not to use the term forensic audit because it suggests to a lot of people might be wrongdoing or something, and we're not suggesting that. So it would be.
Where do you see the forensic audit?
1, 2, 3, 4. It's fourth sentence up from the bottom of the big print. Just delete forensic. And there was a thing, I think I had.
Do you agree with that? No, I definitely said I do not agree with the forensic audit.
Okay, I stand corrected then. Maybe I didn't read it as what I should have. And I think I did make a mistake, and I said we rent the schools for $1. They rent the school from us for $1, but I think it's actually $2.
No, it's not. It's
$1 each times
Okay.
2. Times 2.
Okay, I stand corrected. I thought I made a mistake.
So no change to the minute.
I made a motion that the minutes
January 21st, 2020.
be adopted.
Second.
With no correction.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And I'll recuse.
Yeah, so these are
I didn't make a mistake, but I thought I
Okay.
did.
Okay, first public forum, anything that's on the agenda that you wish to comment on? Feel free. Anything on the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, Stephen Sird, I
Yes.
just reserve the right to comment on the Centrica matter under all business, just for procedural
Oh, sure.
purposes.
No problem, Steve. Anything else? Not on the agenda, I'm sorry. Anything on the agenda? Okay, thank you. Next up under my report, again, the ongoing budget issues with Charahoe. The next meeting is February 11th to adopt the budget and supposedly reduce the budget by $1.2 million. I have no faith that they're going to do that. I exchanged some emails with Catherine Giusti, Jane Daly, the superintendent or acting superintendent, the finance director, Sue Rogers, as well as the chairperson, Ryan Callahan, asking them that they shouldn't wait till the last minute because they had 3 budget meetings where no reductions were made, and they made 1 reduction at 1 meeting, and they're leaving everything to the last meeting of adoption. So I think it's fiscally irresponsible to do that. I suggested they make a supplemental meeting to go over these Catherine Giusti reductions and vote on them, and no one has replied to my email. So the saga continues. Anyway, I just wanted to let folks know what's going on from my end. Certainly, if anyone else has any questions, you can certainly let us know.
I'd like to salute our council president for his leadership in this issue, which is very crucial the operation of town government. And I also note that Councilor Davis and Cataldo have been following it closely, and I thank him for that. But I believe I've stated that I will vote against the budget. I definitely won't vote for the budget. Absolutely, if that doesn't have a management study in there. There has to be a recognition of the problem. And I'm more interested in the bottom line because the power of the school committee is they can move line items around even after the budget is adopted. And that's quite a bit of power when you're dealing with well over 70% of the Hopkinton budget and the majority budget of the other two towns. That's a lot of power that you have even after the budget is adopted. So that's all I have to say on that. I do thank you for your leadership, Mr. President.
All right, thank you.
Yes. One of the things that I thought of in just recently is, and I would ask you, perhaps, maybe Frank, you want to follow up on this, I'll leave it up to you. Every year I've always asked them how many, they'd always put a number in because every year you get retirements. And of course they bring in people each usually at a much lower cost. So every year we'd ask how many we put in for. And it might be 4, it would be some number that they would put in for. And what I'm wondering though is if you could ask them to go back, say 5 years. How many did they put in for the budget, and then how many actually retired? Because that number is, of course, going to be different. But I don't really know how high does it go when there are retires? Do we get to 9 or 10? Is it more? We don't really know. So I thought that maybe going back 5 years might be helpful to the school committee, because then they could ask, well, what's in your current budget? And if they see that the past has been lower than anticipated and they have more retirees, maybe that's a way to help the budget too. But we don't know unless they go back 5 or some years. So it was just a comment.
Yeah, I can add it to my list.
Thank you.
I also think that's a new thought, which I really appreciate. That's a great thought. That's great. We should be able to do that, and that might be very helpful.
Anyway, we'll see how it goes. Thank you. Next up, under old business number 1, discuss, consider a motion, and possibly vote on whether to provide written notice to Centrica Business Systems and other listed applicants concerning the town council's intention to impose a deadline and possible conditional dismissal date for the pending zone amendment and comprehensive plan future land use map amendment applications for the below listed properties as requested by Councilor Davis, following receipt of correspondence from applicant's attorney Stephen Surbert, Esquire, dated January 14, 2020, received by the town clerk on January 21st, 2020, in response to the January 7th, 2020 letter from the town clerk, writing on behalf of the town council, requesting a status report on the below listed applications. 1C is Maitland Fothergill, 10A Crandall Lane, Assessor's Plat 2, Lot 1, and Fatted Farmer, 0 Whichway, Assessor's Plat 7, Lot 20.
I'd like to read the response.
Yeah.
Okay. In the letter dated 1/14/20 from Stephen Surdot from the George Camoli Law Office. For the Fothergill project, it says this project has been delayed due to a number of deaths, family, and the impact on the chain of title and ownership, which have had an impact on the developer's ability to move forward despite the best efforts of the developer. As soon as these issues are resolved, we will move forward. My recommendation is to dismiss this project immediately because the developer no longer has a deal. I don't think we've been here for over a year. I don't think that we need to consider this project anymore. That's my recommendation. Number D, Whichway. This project is currently awaiting interconnection permitting at the regional level to determine viability. As soon as we have more information, we will move forward. And I'm requesting that the town council ask the developer to have National Grid send us a letter by February 17, 2020, stating where this project is in the pipeline of projects waiting for interconnection viability letters, and a projected date from National Grid that this project will receive the pre-approval viability letter. I don't think we have time to keep going on now.
Well, again, that's certainly one opinion.
I understand.
Um,
That's my response.
Yep, so I understand. I know we chatted after the last meeting about, I had, or either you or I had sought attorney advice from our solicitor about the time frame. It's obviously been going on a while. Kevin, our solicitor, felt that we should send them a letter giving them perhaps 90 days to either go forward or not. So it's obviously important to listen to legal advice. 90 days is not too bad, but again, I'll defer to Kevin, and also I'm sure Mr. Surda will have some comments about that. So the good news is, as I mentioned to you on the phone, there was, I think, 5 applications with this.
Four more beyond
Yeah.
two, so.
Yeah, right. So, but 2 of them, one's being withdrawn, the other is going through the Farm Viability Act. So there is some good news there. I guess 2 of them are gone, and still 2 left. So anyway, I know I'll want to hear from Kevin eventually, but Attorney Survet, did you want to?
Sure.
Yeah, hold on, Stephen. Yeah.
Well, I agree that this is too long, but we allowed it to happen. So I'm of the opinion that you give them a deadline. And I don't know about 90 days, but I was thinking more like 30.
I agree.
But you give them a deadline, and you give them 30 days to come forward and tell us, and we'll schedule a hearing, or not. You know?
I was thinking about 60 days, but
I agree with Scott on that one. I would think of 60 days as well. It gives us a time for us to finish our budget, because we've got the big budget coming up in the next month and a half, and it gives us time to concentrate on our budget. 60 days would be right after that, and I think that would be an appropriate
I
time.
just thought it would be 90 days, and it cuts in half. But the thing that concerns me is, even if you have problems in the family, you certainly have to do things. Somebody has to take over and assume responsibility. And the people in this town are so sick of excuses dealing with solar, and they should be commended for their patience, actually, because I think a lot of their chains have been pulled, and I know a lot of people don't like using that term, but I think that's the best term there is. If it's acceptable, I make a motion.
Well, hold on a second, Scott.
You want to hear
I gotta get from legal too, and then from Mr. Surda.
and from Mr. McAllister.
And it might be helpful that if we put a date, whether it's 30
Oh,
days
no.
or 60 days, or whatever it is, that we
That's it.
identify exactly what we mean, that they contact us within a certain time frame and request a hearing. And then it's up to us to set the hearing date. So they actually end up with more time.
Right.
They have to say, we're ready for a hearing
Right.
in certain number.
And
certain
that is
number of
why,
days.
that is why in that Fothergill one, I really think 30 days is enough. He really has no deal. He has no deal, so why are we even considering it?
Well,
Frankly,
yeah.
we could dismiss it tonight.
There's title issues, so that, and there's laws involved with that, but that's.
Well, but that's their developer's problem,
No,
that's
I know,
not
I
the town's
realize that,
problem.
but again, our solicitors give me an opinion, and certainly I value that. We shared that with Sharon at the end of a hearing last time, so there's certainly implications for what we do, so. Anyway, Stephen, you want to just, yeah, sure, Bob.
The other thing is, both the Fothergills and the gentleman who owns Faded Farmer are our citizens. And give them the opportunity.
They've had
You may have thought that, and other people may agree with you, but I do think we need to give them due date. They are our citizens, and they want the right of due process too. As long as we give them a date, and then we do our hearing, and then we can see.
So that's that. Mr. Surda.
To clarify with regards to the Fothergill project, the deaths of the family have created a probate situation and a rolling probate, so there are certain limitations legally that we get stuck in with appointment of executors and executrices, and there being someone appointed who is empowered to act on the behalf of that estate. So it's not as,
When did that person?
there have been a
get
multitude of deaths. There have been 2 deaths in that family of the primary landowner and then their executor. So it's created a cascade
When was
effect.
the
I don't know off the top of my head.
executive?
To my knowledge, the court is struggling to appoint an executor at this time, and we are caught up in that at this time. Those are municipal court proceedings. I can get back to you on an exact date, but we are working diligently to move forward on it. I would concur with your legal counsel that within 90 days, we could certainly file.
Can you do it within 60 days?
I would defer to your legal counsel.
Can we do it within 60 days?
It's up to the council, really.
I know, I'm
Oh,
asking.
yeah, there's an opinion.
I'm asking.
Okay. First of all, you can't do it tonight for either
No,
one.
all right.
We're in uncharted territories here. I've done some research on this. The statute under which these applications were filed is 45-2451, and as you all know, that sets forth very tight deadlines for going to the planning board for an advisory opinion, and then coming here, and then so many days to doing a decision. Now, those deadlines get put off if, as what happened in this case, the attorney for the applicant requests extensions. And that's what happened. So a year or so has gone by, and these things are still in limbo, so to speak. So I could not find a situation such as developed with this. So the easiest part to answer is, can you just dismiss it tonight? The answer is no. Some kind of due process has to be invoked, which is what has been alluded to here by several of the council members, in that some kind of notice would have to be sent to the applicants, giving them a deadline of a date, a number of days from the date of the letter, however you want to do it, as well as conditions that would have to be met. That has to be put forth in writing, notice to so that would satisfy the due process portion of it, so long as the time of the notice is reasonable. Now, what's reasonable to everybody in this room might be a different opinion from person to person. I suggested 90 days, and that was even before I knew about the probate situation that Attorney Sadat has described, which is a legit, I can imagine what happens because I'm also familiar with the probate court in every municipality and how that works. So, I asked myself, and I'm sharing with you tonight, what is reasonable under these circumstances? Well, I've been practicing law and doing court litigation on issues like this for 38 years, actually more than 38 years. And it's kind of a feel thing that I have. I felt, and I'm just being completely candid, I felt 30 days is not reasonable.
Because I forgot about the planning board, it's got to go to them for an advisory.
It's been,
No, but
well,
this is, we're not talking about going to the planning board, we're talking about giving a deadline for it to go into this system, which then sends it to the planning board, so that's different.
Oh, okay.
So, there's no objective definition of what is reasonable. I'm just giving you my honest opinion. 30 days is not reasonable. I think a court would find it not reasonable. I believe 90 days, conservatively speaking, a court probably would find that reasonable. I feel 60 days is right on the edge. As one of you said, it's up to you guys. If it was up to me, I would say 90 days because that's going to do it. That's going to fulfill due process. I think it's going to fulfill reasonableness, and I think it would hold up in court. I can't stand here and tell you that 60 days would hold up in court. My candid assessment of that is that's dicey. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. 30 wouldn't, 90 I think would. So that's how I
So we could provide written notice to them and agree to do that tonight, because that's on.
Yeah, and you set the number of days
Okay.
and tell them what you're going to do after 90 days. And you wouldn't even necessarily have to come back. You could put right in the notice, if this isn't done by 90 days, they're automatically going to be dismissed.
And you could,
Right.
what should, quote, be done, what should go into that motion in the letter for 90 days?
Well, I mean, I can do the line, if,
you did it.
what I had in mind would be, and I'm starting,
This part? You have that?
oh, that's what I wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, I have it right here.
Okay, I wrote it.
I'll just read it. I can borrow it.
Yeah, yeah.
My suggestion suggestion was that the council, this is one thing you could do, this is an option. The council could give each applicant a period of no more than 90 days in which to formally withdraw its original request for the town to delay the processing of these two applications, and to require each applicant to, by that point, to initiate forthwith the planning board and town council proceedings set forth in Rhode Island General Laws 452451 for consideration, requesting amendments to the zoning ordinance and to the future land use map to the comprehensive plan. Should either applicant, and I'm talking about Maitland Fothergill and Faded Farmer, should either applicant fail to meet that 90-day deadline, the council can vote that each non-compliant application would be dismissed automatically as of that date without further action of the council.
Is that a motion that, and
That's a motion I would like to make.
So moved, what you just read?
You can do that.
I just did.
Motion was made and seconded.
And you'll have to provide that.
Yeah, Lisa. So any other comments or questions?
All I can say is that I'm pleased to vote for it. I think we don't need an explanation of the frustration that people have on the whole topic of solar and delays and everything else. But too bad it couldn't be quicker, but I will defer to our solicitor on this, and I will vote this motion.
Okay, motion made second. Stephen, do you have any further comments? Or you?
I'll defer to your solicitor.
Okay, very fine. All right, we have a motion made and seconded. No further comments, folks? All those in favor of the 90-day, sending that letter out, 90 days, I vote by saying aye. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Solicitor.
thank you, Stephen. Yes, sir. Number 2, old business, continued discussion of the Charter Oak Committee's December 10th, 2019 action on its audit subcommittees. November 21st, 2019 recommendations regarding the Charter Oak draft audit report, and consideration and possible motion and vote to send further correspondence to the Charter Oak School Committee discussed on December 16, 2019, including but not limited to a possible follow-up letter to Charter Oak School Committee, requested by Council Vice President Hurst.
Yes, I'm delighted this is back on the agenda, and I think that we should support a more detailed audit. It's not a forensic audit, and I got dressed with the Riot Act by Dottie Gardner, remember that committee, and I'm glad she's here with us tonight. And we really, and I think the most important selling point for this audit is the fact that the advice that the subcommittee received was to do a more detailed audit. And if you read the draft Charter Audit Subcommittee of Thursday, November 21st, 2019, it's very interesting. Right here, Dorothy Gardner asked if deeper reviews and more depth audit on the finances were advisable when one finance officer leaves and another takes over. Mr. Wilkinson stated other municipalities use the reviews as part of their overall risk management program. I think the timing on that is good. And there was some other statements in here. I won't read all of them, I underlined some, but I'd like to have Dorothy Gardner speak because she knows the facts better than I do, certainly, and I'm going by strictly this report, but it says in here, motion by Ken Mott, he's from Hopkinton, second by Dorothy Gardner to approve the audit for fiscal year November 30th, 2019, contingent upon the following conditions being met. 1, receipt of the legal letter. 2, receipt of the final letter from the auditor. 3, language on page 30 to include the dollar amount of the unassigned surplus, $2,835,083. Language on page 48 regarding police and or firefighters be removed. Vote in favor. Vote 4-0 in favor. Connie, Gardner, Mott, and Vanderhook. Motion carried, unanimous. And maybe you'd want to address that because you're more acquainted with this than I am.
Could we hear, I'd like to hear from the council members.
I think that there should be
you might not call it forensic, but I think there just does need to be a management audit. I'm sorry, I agree.
Well, I still management study, which is a regular audit, more detailed audit,
Okay.
in addition to that management study.
Yes, Barbara?
I'm also against the audit. That is not what I feel the chair of the audit subcommittee's draft said. It is to request the auditor add language to the management letter to include a periodic risk management review policy, which I think is valuable, and they should do a periodic risk management review policy. That was actually discussed at the school board meeting because we were discussing cyber problems and that you need to be able to do risk management pretty consistently. And the auditor was there, because I was there at the audit meeting, and he said that that would be something that they would be doing. So the letter to include a periodic risk management review policy is a good idea to have a policy, but it is not an audit. And audits are extraordinarily expensive when you go out of a normal. We are not looking for an issue, we are not looking for a problem. You are trying to make sure that you can do a risk management, which is entirely different from a management study. But the audit committee did not ask for a management study, they asked for a management letter to include a periodic risk management review policy, which I agree with and I think is a wise thing to do. But it is not an audit.
Sharon? Well, Sylvia, do you have any comments?
Yeah, there are things that I remember from the past, and then I called former school committee members to refresh my memory. I'm in favor of this, of an independent audit as part of the overall risk management program. When leadership changes, when the finance officers change, the auditor agreed that this is important, that municipalities will look at these sorts of things. But not naming names and knowing that, as we all know, things do happen, things go wrong, something may come up. Bill says, you know, we need to do this, we have goals for every year, whether it's bid policies, there are things that change with time over the years. And what has never happened at Charahoe, with all the finance directors that have come and gone, there's never been it's just been the routine, typical audit, did the same thing, you know, every year.
By the same firm?
Yeah, well, it happens to be the same firm. I'll give you some examples of things that happen and these particular issues, I'll go over them, and I believe they all started from the school committee, from members of the school committee. For instance, way back, there was an oil spill. Some of us know there was an oil spill at the school. And it was an emergency, and they had somebody come in on an emergency basis to deal with this spill. What ended up happening, however, is that just rolled into every year that same firm would deal with it, try to resolve it, try something different to deal with this because it was an ongoing problem. And to the tune of more than $100,000 every year, there was one bill that was around $200,000. So it's not even about, well, that's what it ended up costing. I was going to say it's not about the money, but of course it's about the money. But what ended up happening is that went on from year to year. A couple of school committee members or a school committee member got the school department to recognize, or the administration to recognize, you really need to go out to bid on this. Instead of just having the same firm dealing with it, and year after year, I think it went on for what, a decade? It was ongoing.
It was more than that.
So they went out to bid, they had somebody come in, it's solved.
Oh,
And
it's still
it
there.
didn't cost, no, there's still this problem, but they came in and they dealt with it, and it was through bidding. Another problem that happened more recently, after the RISE came up and was online, is they had a contract to provide services for their psychologists, social workers, to help with the RISE program. It turned out that the staff within RISE, what they had to do is they didn't have their own social worker. So they borrowed a social worker a few hours a week from the high school. Okay, makes sense, as long as they're having their needs met. It turned out that the contract that included this comprehensive services, which include psychologists or social workers, whatever, that they were paying for 3 clinical social workers that weren't there and never were there, and it just got missed. So they came up with a new contract, and that got solved. Now, whether they got their money back or not, I don't know. But those things happen. And another one is the VOTEC. The school decided, or between the state and the school, they came up with an arrangement that, okay, you can buy the VOTEC. And so the school wanted to say, well, there are repairs that need to be done. Okay, when you evaluate the building, tell us how much. And it turned out to be an X amount of money, whether it was $1 million or whatever, the state would provide for repairs to the VOTEC. And then you can buy the building. And that's what happened, and that went through. The administration didn't have Castle Boo or whoever look at that. They had their regular, the building and grounds supervisor did the evaluation to say this is what's wrong with the building. After they bought the building, it found out that it was going to cost close to $1 million to do more additional repairs after they already bought it. So then the school had a legal case with the state, and it's just one of those, stuff that happens, okay? So then there's another one where somebody on the school committee, and you hope that the staff has the expertise or the guidelines to do their job. And one of the things that a school committee member recognized, just by noticing a bill, and I didn't notice, does anyone here know that when and this has to be with the RISE building, RISE building, there's reimbursements through Medicaid, Medicare for that. But when you use Medicare and Medicaid and you receive money from them for something at the school, you have to have, your server has to be backed up. There wasn't any backup. It's required under the law. This is a federal guideline that you do that. Well, it got noticed and found by a school committee member, just by chance. You have to have somebody that's familiar with those sorts of guidelines and federal regulations and found that out. So they backed it up. Now, those are just a few examples of things that happen. I'm not talking names, I don't want to point fingers, but that's why it's important sometimes. This budget has grown, and the school department has grown, and we have students there from all the towns. And of course, I know it's going to cost something, but what could it possibly save if they're to look for inefficiencies and make recommendations on what to change and what to do, and it'll be better. It'll be better for the taxpayer, it'll be better for the school department, and it's not looking to find fault or blame anybody, but it's to look for inefficiencies. And that's why I think that this, it's not a forensic audit, it's to look at their overall risk management.
Exactly.
And a safety audit. I'm not an expert on those things, so I'm not sure what to call it, but I think if we decide to do this, we want to make sure that the other 2 towns understand where we're coming from.
But I think that is important, because what they've been trying to do is the efficiency. That has been asked. One of the people who came to the school budget, I believe it was the gentleman who was here, Roger, Ron, mentioned that as well to them, that they could do an efficiency study. That's not an audit, though. That is an efficiency study. And a risk management policy is a good idea. But I think that we're throwing this word audit, and it's not an audit. It is a policy. Certainly, risk management is important. An efficiency study is important, and I think that's very valuable. But it is not an audit.
And I agree with you that I would have called it a management study, something like that. I wouldn't have called it, I wouldn't have called it an audit, but you need something to look at how people are doing things, where they're spending their money in general, not as a financial thing.
So maybe it's not called an audit, maybe it is a study, but it needs to be intensive and done.
Efficiency, and what they have said right here, risk.
That's what the
periodic
policy is
risk management review policy, which means it's periodic, which means you do it every 5 years. So that would be good if they do it, but then they do an efficiency.
And I worry about policy.
Yeah,
The
policy
policies
is
get
just
thrown out,
stating
yes.
things, it's not really
They
studying
could
and
develop a
changing.
policy, but this study
But
needs to
if
be
they do
done.
it, then it should be a policy where it is done as a continual basis.
Anyway,
I just want to say before Donnie speaks and she knows, the sad commentary about this whole situation is we have a school committee of 12 people, one vacancy. And you know, if you have 12 people, under that group, you should have a significant number that questions things. And that's the sad commentary about the way Truro operates. Thank you.
anyway, so, last meeting, I think it was, we voted to send a letter to Charo officials and the other councils, I believe, on a management study, right? Because I think Bill drafted it. It's in the packet, right? So we've done the management thing. Now, this is an independent audit. Again, it speaks to Sylvia's questions and concerns, and also mine about the risk management when you have a financial manager leave. She's leaving in March next month.
With a major leadership
Yeah,
changes.
and also, you know, they have an interim superintendent. She's perhaps staying, but they're going to look for an outside person to come in at a per diem basis. You know, so all this stuff really speaks to having an independent audit. Now, I don't know who's going to pay for it. That's the other thing. You know, I think Charo should pay for it, but I doubt they would. So we don't have that authority to say that, you know, we think we should have an independent audit and you pay for it. I think we'll get laughed at. But
Maybe we should get away from the word audit and refer to it as a study. Maybe
And
that's helpful.
and use efficiency.
Yes.
Because that's really what you're talking about, is efficiency and waste. And then risk, because I think that's very important.
one member from the Charlestown Town Council wants to know who's going to pay for it. So I assume I wouldn't pay for it because I think it's on them. But anyway, so we have to put that in the letter.
Yeah, more than $2 million
Oh, I know.
in excess, they can
Trust me.
pay for it.
Dorothy,
Take me just a minute, I have to unfold. With all due respect to all of you, thank you for discussing this, but I must tell you, you were not there at the sub-audit committee meeting. And risk management is a little descriptor that Mr. Wilkinson applied to an audit. If you will read the notes from the audit subcommittee, you will see that we discussed an audit. And that was his answer: yes, there should be an audit. It's called the risk management, whatever it is in the minutes that you have.
Overall risk management programs.
Yeah, and it's usually banks do it, farms do it, pharmacies do it, you know, everybody does it because they need to make sure that things are going well. And during that meeting, I discussed being an employee of a pharmaceutical company where I would audit investigative sites, but we called it monitoring. Okay? We would say we're going to monitor this site. And someone would come behind me and they would do a safety review. And that was an audit of me and the investigative site. So you shouldn't get hung up on a descriptor. We need an audit, and we sure as shoot need a management study also, but I think the audit is very important. And I've heard some concerns about the cost. But when you look at just one thing, and that would be the low-tech building that we ended up having to spend more than $1 million on because that wasn't done properly, the review, the financial review. And when it comes down to the social workers, the clinical social workers, I do not know how long RISE ran with no clinical social workers when we were paying for 3 full-time social workers. I have no idea. The only way you would find out would be in an audit. So I wish you wouldn't get hung up on descriptors, but rather think about the job that needs to be done. And it needs to be done independently, outside of the control of Charahoe as a school system. Now, when the auditor agrees that an outside auditor should come in and do this risk management audit,
Pretty good indicator.
I fail to understand why no one else thinks it's necessary.
I think even supposedly the regular audits are supposed to be changed, what, every 3 years, or what's the time frame?
No, they go through bids, it's a bid process.
So
Just
maybe
like an
that's
architect
just
is a bid process.
Maybe that's just a town level.
Right.
And one other thing of note is that I was on the building committee before I was on the school committee on the 2010 project. And part of the 2010 project was to replace all the servers and make sure that adequate backup was there. And one night after I was done with that, because I went onto the school committee, I noticed a charge. And I said, what's that for? And they said, we had to rebuild entirely the information that was on that server. I said, what server was that? They said, the Medicare and the Medicaid. So I said, well, we just redid all the servers. And they said, you know, that was the only one that wasn't redone. It was the only one. And I said, well, what about the backup? We didn't have any backup. And I said, you didn't. It's required. You know, you're supposed to have that for Medicare and Medicaid charging. So, I don't know, I'd be much more comfortable with an audit, and I think that whatever the towns spend on it, you'll recoup.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't agree with the towns buying it.
No,
but-
I'm not yet.
No, the Charahoe School District gets millions of dollars a month from all the 3 towns, multiple millions, and,
There's a lot of people to pay for.
but they can do it
And we
and,
pay for it anyway, so
Right.
that's
so,
part of their budget.
and they control it, they control it.
Rather than just-
The Charahoe School Committee, we cannot direct them to do whatever. We can ask them, we can say pretty please and all that type of stuff. But the fact is they control the ball, so,
One other really weird thing is everyone seemed to be in agreement, you know, with this, because we discussed it at length. And we didn't hear any feedback that was negative until I got a note, and I said, you know, where are the letters? You know, and they just said that they didn't need that letter, and they didn't need an audit, and then they start quoting some text from, you know, accounting manuals, you know, having to do with school districts, and I'm thinking, there's something crazy here. And then I understand that someone, I don't know who it was, definitely in administration, said, oh, the audit's been passed by the audit subcommittee and they just sent it upstate. Previously, if we didn't pass an audit, they had to fix it before the state would accept it, but none of that happened.
I have a question, Dorothy. On the second page of this, did they do the receipt of the legal letter, the number 2, receipt of the final letter from the auditor? Did they change the language on page 30 and the language on page 48?
I couldn't
Your audit subcommittee recommendations, did they comply with those?
Yes, 4.
No.
Not to my knowledge, no. I never received the letter from the attorney that was supposed to be appended to the audit report, and I never received a management letter from the...
So did you call the auditor and ask him where that was?
I did not.
Oh, okay.
I did not call the auditor. But that would have
Can your
been his
chair,
job.
can your chair at your subcommittee call the auditor?
Pardon me?
Can the chair of the subcommittee, of the audit subcommittee, call the auditor and say, did you do the following things?
I don't know. I do know that she said that she had sent the minutes to the school committee so that they would know that there should be 2 letters appended to that report.
Probably that person should go in front of the school committee and ask the question then.
I
Whoever the
believe-
vote chair is.
I believe that since a representative from finance was at that meeting, that probably is her purview to be able to explain to everyone. I mean, Barry Ritchie is dead.
Or whether that was sent or not sent, because I don't know the answer to
Well, can
that.
I just interject for a second? These 4 conditions have nothing to do with the audit
Correct.
Pardon?
that we're asking for. These 4 conditions have nothing to do with the independent audit.
Correct.
So
Let's get back to the order.
let's get back to the audit. Okay, so,
Yeah.
please. Anyway, so if, no, I understand, Dorothy. We'll figure it out. But, so if somebody would want to make a motion to send some correspondence to the administration and the rest of the school committee and the town councils.
I make a motion that we send a letter to the school committee concerning the auditor's report and the draft minutes from the charitable audit subcommittee that involves the management letter to include a periodic risk management review policy, but also a risk management assessment and a review of the efficiency, an audit efficiency review.
Not crazy about your motion.
Okay, you can make one.
Then,
All right, let me give a stat.
What was that?
I
before
move-
I withdraw it for a sec, Barbara, just make it clear.
Withdraw.
and I know you don't like the word audit. I move that the Hopkinton Town Council request, excuse me, that the Hopkinton Town Council send letters to Richmond and Hopkinton. Excuse me, I'm sorry, Richmond and Charlestown. And that we urge them to agree that an independent audit/study as part of an overall risk management program be done, especially when leadership changes and financial officers leave.
You want to include the
Does that
school
help?
committee?
The school committee can be CC'd because we're asking for support from Richmond
Yeah.
and Charlestown to agree that we feel this is important.
Can we add risk and efficiency management assessment?
Yes, yes.
So let's put efficiency in there because we're not looking just for risk.
Okay, so exactly where do you want?
Wherever you had put, where you had said risk originally, just add and efficiency management assessment.
Yes,
Or
and,
management review.
yeah, and I think that perhaps this could come from you, Bill? Is that appropriate? Because you did send it for the management, and then we just CC the school. And to, as part of that letter, this is just a motion, but as part of that letter to express why it is that we're looking for inefficiencies, we're looking for recommendations, you know, to put that in the letter so that they understand we're not looking to, you know, fire people, we're looking to improve the school system.
So second.
Motion made.
Do you need to repeat that, Lisa?
No, I don't think we could.
I didn't know why you
Bear
had
with
that.
me,
Yeah,
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
that you would like the Hopkinton Town Council to send a letter to the towns of Richmond and Charlestown, urging them to agree to an independent audit or study in regards to a risk and efficiency management study and/or assessment. And to see the school committee and express why the efficiencies and recommendations are.
On the last order, Bill wrote it and I signed it, so it went from, had my name on it.
right, of course, agreed,
Yeah, the same as last.
agreed.
So,
Okay.
okay, we have a motion made and seconded, okay?
Well, they,
Yes.
and you're CCing the school board,
Yes.
the school committee.
Yes.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on this matter, folks? Okay, having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Hallelujah. Yeah, and when school committee's like, you know, you want us to cut the budget, but then you just add it in expense, we'll take it from your surplus. From there.
Look at that. Boards, commissions, and committees. Number 1, discuss, consider, and possibly vote to appoint an individual to fill the vacancy and serve as Hopkinton's representative on the Charitable School Committee until November 2022.
Mr. President, I am proud to nominate David Stahl to fill the vacancy on the Carroll School Committee.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Okay, any further discussions, folks?
I was very impressed with his interest in, he has 5 children in the schools that are in the school system. He has been a wonderful member and citizen of Ashaway in particular, and is the pastor for the Seventh-day Baptist, First Seventh-day Baptist Church in Ashaway. But he seems very interested in both the elementary and the high school levels. He is curious, he is interesting, he is well-spoken, and I think he is a conservative fiscally conservative gentleman. I think he will be a wonderful addition to our school committee, and I think he will be taking a look at the budget very carefully, but also protecting the children as he can, but also not forgetting his to protect the citizens. I think he'll be excellent.
I am very proud that Dave Stahl will really reflect community service and public service. I think he's, from my impression in the short while I've known him, I think he's a man that is inquisitive, he's strong-willed, he does have a backbone, and he appreciates education, he's working for his doctorate, he does have a family, he's a leader in the Ashway section of town, he's head of pastor of one of the churches, and I think he will be an asset to the town of Hopkinton serving on this Charter School Committee.
Well, he certainly knows about the need and why it is taxpayers have such great needs and why there's so many homeless. I mean, he knows all that, so.
Yeah, so I was impressed, Dave. I know you from Ashaway, even though I live in the north end of town. I've seen you around. I fielded a complaint, I think, from a dog barking perhaps a while ago from the chief. And anyway, so I was very impressed with your interview. And the only reason I won't support is Larry, as the one I had asked him to put his name in. So he put me as a recommendation. So I'm going to stick with Larry, but in the event that there wasn't enough support, I certainly would change that because I was so impressed with you. And I don't want you to take that negatively, please, because Larry had asked him to put his name forward. And, anyway, so I see him on a weekly basis too. So.
I want to say, Mr. President, I know people might want to speak, Sharon might, but we had 3 applicants, and I hope that the 2 that were not selected will consider serving on one of the many vacancies we have on our boards and commissions. They certainly would reflect credit to serving the town of Hopkins in some other capacity. And maybe.
Well said, Scott. Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on the appointment of Mr. Stahl to the Charter School Committee to replace Sylvia Stanley? Have you heard none? All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'll abstain.
You will spoke? Okay. And yeah, just because I know Larry, so I will put that it's 3. So the motion carries.
So you got another job?
Congratulations, Mr. Stahl.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget 2/11. That's when the vote is. So if you need to get brought up to speed, you can call any one of us, including the clerk. We can give you a lowdown.
Good, you can vote for the audit.
Yes, ma'am.
I would change it if it needs. Okay. So anyway, congratulations. So yeah, so you can reach out to Lisa. She can install you,
Okay.
swear you in. I guess no swearing.
Quickly.
Swear you in.
Efficiently, efficaciously.
Good luck. You'll need it.
Thank you very much.
Let us know.
I will do my best to work very well.
No.
Thank you.
No, Lisa.
You can wait till after.
Can you wing it?
Well, I'd like to have the paperwork ready.
Oh, okay.
I don't have the paperwork ready.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Thank you, Dave. That's it for that. Okay, last public forum. Anything not on the agenda that we should be heard?
So, I'm going back to our, obviously to our Skunk Hill, but also some of the other projects, that are on the table right now. So I'm speaking of the 3 yes votes. And one of the things that I've heard come up time and time again is that you needed the money. We need the money, we need the money. And it occurred to me, it's like, so if somebody robs a bank because they need the money, is that okay? Right. Exactly. Pardon?
It's a crime.
Pardon, sir?
You can't block meetings.
Right. And you're not supposed to spot zone.
Again,
So is there anything else you want to say?
that's.
Bill?
He's agreeing with you.
No, I
He's
don't.
agreeing with you.
No, he wasn't.
Anyway.
So, but my point is that the fact that you need the money doesn't make it okay to do something to you. Maybe I'm not expressing myself correctly, I don't know. So, during the recent solar workshop, actually it's not so recent anymore, but I've been waiting to be able to discuss this. Sylvia, you mentioned the fact that you didn't understand why, that people were saying to you that they didn't understand why you were doing this, why you were
Right.
doing this, right?
Right, and because we wanted to answer them.
Right,
Right.
exactly. And I think that you may be potentially out of touch with what that question was, with the why. Okay? I think people are asking questions like, I think you'd have to be like living under a rock not to know that there's financial issues in Hopkinton. So I think what people are asking is why did you ignore the unanimous planning, position on this, the planning board, position on this? Why did you involve yourselves in the planning process, rather than just making the determination about whether or not it was or was not, in keeping with the comprehensive plan? Why did you spot zone an area so close to neighborhoods, commercial? Why did you vote to put these projects in without having an adequate understanding of the decommissioning that was going to be involved, that could potentially cause huge problems in the future for this town? For the people at Maxon Hill, why did you let the developer break a bunch of rules? Why did you only look at the money now without looking at the potential collateral damage later? Why did you think of solar only as being something that would fix the problem versus, suggesting people get involved with with the economic development? And I certainly understand that the economic development has not been, hugely embraced in this town. I get that. I get the fact that there's been a lot of pushback on any kind of economic development happening. But I also think that if solar was going to be the answer, which it isn't, because you could cover this town in solar and it still wouldn't fix everything, and all we would have is a toxic waste dump in 10 to 20 years with all the solar panels. But the point is that I don't think that you understand why people are so angry. I really don't. I think that perhaps there's a disconnect there. I think that if you lived on Maxon Hill, you'd understand why people, maybe you'd understand why people are so angry. So people aren't asking you why we need the money. They get that. They're asking why you did it this way.
I do have to disagree with about 90% of your questions.
Okay.
The way they were expressed.
Okay.
But it's your
Okay.
opinion. It's your opinion.
Yeah, that's what this is
And I'm
about.
sure that you did, just like I disagreed with your position. The other thing that I have to say, that the biggest disagreement I have, and the biggest issue for me personally, is when you held up one of these and looked at the audience and said, make sure that when you get one of these, you come.
Absolutely.
What good did that do Skunk Hill?
It would have helped in Maxon Hill.
What good did that do Skunk Hill?
Sorry you disagree.
Again, Luann, we're not on trial here.
We've
We've been through this before.
Yes.
We have.
Yes.
We've been through it before, so can you make your point about the cards for the butters?
But the cards,
Yeah.
okay? Skunk Hill showed up.
Okay,
They lined up down the hallway.
correct.
They spoke,
And guess what?
they pleaded, and they cried, and you still.
And guess what? And we're entitled to make our opinion
And
based
you
on
wanna,
facts.
and you wanna know what? You backed people into a corner, and now they're in lawsuits.
Again,
So,
Sylvia has the prerogative as a counselor
She
to make
does.
the decision, and
She
she's not on
does.
trial here.
I didn't say that she was on
Although
trial.
you're insinuating a lot of things here.
No, what I,
Yes, you are.
what
She's just making
What
her
am I
opinion.
Sharon, please, she's going beyond that.
She's going to be.
Luann, let's get to your point.
I want to know what
Get
it
to your
is
point.
you think I'm insinuating.
Well, I'm insinuating a lot.
What
You're-
is it? What is it that I'm insinuating?
You're putting Sylvia on trial.
No, what I'm doing is I'm answering something that Sylvia said from
You
up
can talk to
there.
her outside
during-
if you have a question or problem with her.
This part of this
Again,
hearings should be anything on anything.
Sharon,
They have a right on
I
anything.
realize that, but they have a right not to put someone on trial for a past
She's
decision.
she's not asking her to answer.
Okay, all right.
She's
She
just
seems
making
she's asking
her
a
point.
question.
In that
She's
case-
just making her
in
point.
that
Anyway, can you get to your point about the abutter notices?
I'm just giving the point, the fact that I think that it's incredibly out of touch for you to suggest that we should have paid attention to these.
Those things matter. They do matter. And the planning board is not the town council. The planning board plans. The town council is responsible for everything townwide. So that sometimes a developer or a development might occur in town that may or may not be supported by townspeople, but the town council may decide that it may be needed or may not. Not every project has been approved, and not every project will be approved in the future. It's always case by case, and I stand by my votes. And I'm not the only one. I don't know why everybody focuses.
No,
I'm just me.
I'm only focusing on you because of your remarks at the solar workshop. That was it.
Well,
Okay, and it just felt to me like you were out of touch with why people are angry. And I thought that it was extraordinarily hypocritical to wave this around and tell people that they should show up
your
when it
opinion.
didn't do any good,
Your opinion.
okay? Well, it didn't do any good at Skunk Hill.
It did do good because
All right.
people
No,
showed
it
up.
didn't.
Can we get beyond
Did-
this?
Yeah, they
Do you have
showed up
anything
and
else?
they didn't get heard.
Luann, do you have
They
anything
did
else to
hurt.
bring to the council's attention?
The point that I'm trying to make is the fact that I think that you're making it much more difficult than it needs to be for one of your residents to express their difficulty with what's going on. I think you're making it more difficult. I think that you're making it very, very uncomfortable for people to get up here and to talk. And I think that that is not the position that this town should be encouraging. You've interrupted me.
Yep, I have,
You
correct. Because
interrupted
I
me.
think you've attacked a council person and I take...
There's no attack in here.
Yeah, I think you did.
There's no attack in here.
I think you did. So
Well,
that's
that's your
my
opinion.
Right.
That's your
Susanna,
opinion. I
that's my
feel
opinion.
like the 3 yes votes have attacked our neighborhood.
Okay, your
Do
opinion?
you understand?
That's your opinion.
Okay. So guess
So
what?
do you have
We get
anything
to be
else to
angry.
bring to the council's attention?
No, thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. Anyone else for anything not on the agenda? Joseph? Go ahead.
Denise Marble, 120 Woodville, Alton Road. I just have to stand up here and back Luann up. It's really uncomfortable up here. I agree with what she's saying, that at the solar workshop, people at Maxim Hill Road, it was insinuated that if they had come out to council meetings and expressed concern about solar coming in, that might have made a difference. And I completely agree with Luann that it wouldn't have made a difference. Because the people at Skunk Hill came out and they begged and they pleaded, like at the last meeting, the people from Main Street came out and they begged and they pleaded with you to please protect their rights as property owners in town. And the money was put ahead of them. So please, when citizens are coming up, we're allowed to come up here, we're allowed to express opinions, we should not be interrupted, we should not be badgered the way she just was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I only interrupted...
I don't want to talk about it.
We don't want to talk
All
about
I'm
it.
saying is I interrupted you because I felt you were personally attacking Sylvia.
I don't care about your opinion
Well,
about
that's
what you
fine.
thought.
I'm trying to...
This was really
I'm
Public-
charged,
pushing it, Frank.
Public forum should be
I'm charged,
where people can
I re-
express their
Sharon,
opinions, even
Sharon.
if you consider it
That's
an
right, if you
attack.
don't like it,
Sharon.
that's
Even if
not
you
your
consider it an
business.
attack. They have the
We-
right to
we've had
say what
enough-
they feel.
we've had enough contention over the solar issue for years.
In
It's
your
gonna continue.
opinion,
In
but
your
it's not
opinion.
going to end. It's not going to end.
Sharon, please
You can't
stop.
shut it
It's
down,
not going
right?
to end.
I'm
You
back
can't
to the
shut it down.
microphone,
I'm
and I
charged
really
with
don't
running
want
the
to be
meeting.
here.
I'm
You
charged
can't
with
shut it
running the
down,
meeting,
Frank.
okay? And if I
You
think
don't have the
someone is
right.
personally attacking someone, I'm gonna say something.
You personally
You-
attack us.
You have
She
not
needs to
done
shut
that,
up.
so that I did not interrupt you.
When Tex Hillgate, that's
I
wrong.
didn't hear
That's
any
fucking wrong.
attack. I heard an
She's had
accurate
police walk her to the car
response to
because
something
these fucking
that
solar people.
Counselor Thompson did
Is that
say
good?
at the
Is that
solar
right?
workshop. I get it that there's a lot of sensitivity around this, and perhaps it felt like she was being singled out. I think it was that she said those words, which we were all here, and we know she did. So thank you for your efforts. Good night.
Could I just very briefly explain one little thing about Maxon Hill? And it relates to every project. If people respond to the little green card and they go out, and if they had, what happens is, even if the council's like, well, gee, maybe that project will go forward. But the fact that people think, oh, gee, how many feet this is from my property line? Or somebody said, we want to be careful. Make sure that when you make your motion, that they can only use the exit onto Route 3. That got missed. There was another one where you can vary it and say, well, okay, those are the setbacks, but we're worried about a neighbor who's very close, so let's increase the setbacks on that side. Nobody said those things, and that's why you can't expect 5 people to think of everything. But when people come out and say things, you listen, and even if a project goes forward, you can make it better and safer for people if you hear from people, if they attend the meetings. And that's why I hope people respond to the little green cards.
It was also the very first solar,
Right, it was.
which means we all had a learning process, all of us.
So, anyway.
And Maxon Hill was the first, and it was a 3-2 vote. It wasn't 5-0. But it was our first time too. So we know we made mistakes and corrected them. And that's part of the learning process when you have brand new things in front of you.
Okay,
Well, like
yes, Joe.
Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. As you know, I was in business most of my life. I worked for CBS Pharmacy for 18 years. I was a district manager. And I think what we're doing here is we're sugarcoating the word audit. And I agree for the second meeting in a row with Dorothy. Part of my responsibility was every quarter, I had 8 or 10 categories where I had to do an audit on individual stores. I knew those stores inside and out, and I did the audit. An audit will keep people honest. That's the point of an audit. When you talk about study, I think of, again, in my opinion, when there's a study, I think of efficiency. How can we improve putting this product on the shelf? And maybe have an outside engineer do that study. We also had pharmacy supervisors that I work very closely with. Dorothy mentioned pharmaceutical. You can imagine the issues where you give someone a wrong script or you're missing C2 drugs. That pharmacy supervisor had to do audits, and they did audits monthly. And if there was an issue, they did weekly audits. Well, again, it's my opinion, but it's far different than, I think, a study versus an audit. And people need to realize that they're going to be held accountable, and if they're in charge of millions of dollars, then they need to be held accountable for that. I only want to talk about the town budget, but the next thing I want to mention briefly was the attorney, and I realize he's left. There was a promise made that there would be a black binder provided for any of the butters that wanted this information for Chase Hill Road. That never happened. There was another promise made that if you give me your email addresses, we will electronically send you all of the information for Chase Hill Road. That happened, I believe, one of our I spoke to, it happened on a Thursday, prior to a Monday meeting. So it really did not give them enough opportunity, in my opinion, to review all the facts. I don't know if the other two butters that are signed up received the information. You know, I mentioned quite a few months ago, and I'm glad the council had this discussion along with Kevin. I mentioned, I believe that these developers need deadlines, and you get to the word of what's reasonable. There were 5 projects that came in just prior to January 22nd, 2019. I can vividly remember speaking with Jim Lampier about that. He said, there they are, they're in the box. Obviously, they were trying to get them in ahead of time prior to the new ordinance, and that's part of business. But and I told you at the last meeting, delay, and they'll go away. You know, when do we set the deadline to say enough is enough? And I don't have a lot of confidence that you give them 90 days, which I agree, I think 60 days is fine, but I'm not an attorney. You give them 90 days, and what's going to happen when something happens again and they can't do it. The last point I want to mention, and I want to thank Brian, he's not here, and Bill, and all the council members that worked on the town budget. A couple of us that went to the Charahoe budget, and it was like crickets in that room. When you listen to our representatives, the one hearing that I went to, as far as disputing some of the numbers. Well, my main point is with the town budget, there were very few people that attended our budget here also. I went back the other day and I looked at our town budget, and one of the things that I thought about, and I'm sure Bill and others have thought about this, is I think this budget is different this year. And the reason why I say that is, December 31st, I was going by my favorite place, Palmer Circle. My wife thinks I have a girlfriend up there because I go by there every day. Anyway, there was a gentleman there, and I stopped and I was talking with him, and he was from National Grid. And I said to him, when is this going to be online? And he said, when I get back to the office today, it should be up and running. And I was speaking with a council person a week ago Saturday, and we were discussing another project on Route 91, which was close to being at that point. And I started thinking about it. And again, it's just my suggestion. I would think that on the budget for this coming year, you couldn't do it last year, obviously, because the revenue wasn't showing up yet. I would like to see on this budget a separate line item for solar. And then underneath that, list Palmer Circle, and list the revenue, and list the expenses. Do the same thing for each solar project that's coming up, so that we can monitor and see, are we getting the revenue, and the residents can look at it. Are we getting the revenue that was promised to us? Are there expenses with these solar projects? Because my concern is there's so many of them that are going to be coming up, and how are we going to monitor, are we getting exactly what we were told we were going to get?
That's a good idea.
Again, there's a lot of promises, I think, with some of these developers, but I think we need to look at the expense and the revenue part.
You said Palmer Circle, what was the other one you said, 91?
91,
Palmer Circle's up, Route 216 is up, they're all running.
Palmer Circle, I know definitely December
Gray Lane has
31st.
been for a couple of years.
Which one's that?
Gray Lane has been for a couple of years, so has Bank Street. They've been up and running for several years.
And I
It's
think,
really interesting to watch the birds around them.
right, and I think if you look at those numbers, you can say, wait a minute, I don't see the revenue from the building permit. You know, were we supposed to get something for,
The building permit will be in there, Joe, and then the...
under
taxes-
solar, the second
Yes,
one?
yes,
Well,
but
what-
the taxes will not, because they won't be able to be applied until the year.
Right, but at least you could list it.
But what's
We have it all
normal,
documented. It's
but
all-
what's normal in a budget is that we would get a feel for what's the revenue coming into the building department, includes everything, and then you reasonably pick a number and you say, well, that's what I think belongs in the budget. However, a supplemental, this isn't something you put in the budget, but a supplemental attachment that can be handed out to individuals
Okay,
that shows the breakdown of revenue
And it should be any economic project.
So at least you can see it, and
Yeah.
again, it gets back to the
What
audit.
have we received, what do we expect to receive?
Right, because now you have a paper trail, and you look at an audit,
Oh, yeah.
I would want to do the audit and say, are we getting what we were promised?
Oh, actually, we want to make sure we're getting.
Right,
what we
exactly.
want,
That's excellent.
Because we need every penny of it, so
There's no expenses either, so. just-
there are no expenses, that is correct.
Right, right.
So I think that's a good idea, but I'm sure that Bill will be on top of that with Brian and Rosso.
Yeah, I know
Because it matters
everybody,
to us far more seriously to just about anyone else.
I know, like I said initially, they all did a great job with this budget. But, you know, when I'm looking at Palmer Circle, from what I understand, they have to go back and redesign the drainage pond that they have there, and now they can't do it. So this is like the third time. There's debris that they left in the cul-de-sac that's over
They're
there.
just finished, it's a construction site, I'm sure they're going to fix all of it, and Jim Lampier would be the one in charge of that. But it is a construction site, and it is over, and now they'll have to do all that.
But I guess my point is, they're getting the benefit of the revenue, and
Oh,
it
so
hasn't
are
been,
we,
and
but
it's
so
not,
are
it's
we.
not completed.
The moment that's up and running, we can tag right into it.
Okay.
So it does matter to us a great deal, and I'm sure Mr. McGarry and Mr. Rosso are on top of it. And our tax assessor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
You gotta disinfect this sucker.
Anyone else?
Don't leave the country, Joe, they won't let you back in.
Going to China.
Good evening, Ron Crowlitz, 278 Main Street, Nashway. Back to the school budget, whether it's an audit or a study or whatever, being a taxpayer, I want to know, I would like to know where the money's being spent. Outside opinions, outside audits, scrupulization, whatever you want to call it, is always a good thing. The old timers used to say, a new broom sweeps clean. So somebody comes in and sees something, if it costs us $100,000 for the audit, and they find $101,000, it's still a positive. So that's my theory on that. And the elephant in the room, the solar project stuff. Sitting around, listening to all these people talk, in my opinion, they should do research and find out things for themselves, and not just listen to the lobbyists. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, anyone else? Public forum. Having heard none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you, good night.